I am your host, the Catman, Brian Cataquet, a.k.a. the Card King. We are live on ABC's KMET 1490am.com, your number one spot right here for news and talk on the West Coast. I thank everyone for tuning in this morning. On the telephone line, I welcome to the program the legendary voice of the Memphis rock band, Tora Tora. We welcome in the great Anthony Corder. Anthony, thanks for being on the air with me. Appreciate it.
Hey, Brian, what's happening, man? Thank you so much for having me, man.
Oh, my pleasure. And let's start early beginnings in music. You come from a musical family background, and it was your aunt which turned you on to rock music for the very first time, right?
Yeah, man. They, we talk about influences and stuff a lot. I never realized how important my family was, what a huge influence they were. We're all from down in the Delta in Mississippi, and we were kind of like porch pickers. None of my family was, professionals before I came along. It was just part of growing up, man. As far back as I can remember, there was music in the house. My granddad was listening to Mississippi John Hurt records, and my uncles and aunts were sitting around playing and picking. And so she introduced me. They were listening to all kind of stuff. But one of the most vivid memories is Kiss Destroyer, probably when I was a little kid. She had that poster on her wall, and Destroyer came out, and she played God of Thunder. And I just remember it just totally freaked me out, man. The little kids singing at the beginning and all that. I just thought it was the craziest thing. I go, what is this? And then, of course, she played Detroit Rock City and Shout Out Loud and all those. And I just ended up, grabbing my tennis racket like every other kid did back then and jumped on my bed and thought I was freaking Kiss. I loved it. It was awesome. And but she turned me on to a lot of stuff, man. We listened to Journey, and they listened to Leonard Skinner records, and she was really versatile, man. Even to this day, she's still one of the best singers I've ever heard in my life, man. And she's still a huge influence on me. We still sing and play together all the time, when our family gets together. And, it's just amazing. My mom she plays piano. We still jam. My mom's gigging more than me right now.
Oh,
She's
really?
She's hanging out in Mississippi, and they're retired, and she has a jam she does every week and gets people together, and they just love it, man. Music is such a powerful force. It's something just incredibly powerful and magical about it, man, that it just touches people, it moves people, and I've just feel very blessed that I've been able to do it for as long as I've been doing it, and to still be traveling around singing and playing and feeling good. And getting to see all the people that we've shared all this music with over the years, it's just incredible, man. We've kind of grown up with all these people, man, through the years. So it's been a wild ride.
Yeah, no question. I mean, the music definitely in your blood. I mean, as a teenager, did you ever envision that you'll be in a professional rock band?
Man, actually, I had a vision, man. When I met the Tora guys, I was kind of knocking around in some local bands, and the guys in the band are a couple of years older than me, and they had a previous band before. They had done some recording, so I thought they were really established. I thought they were seasoned veterans. I didn't realize they were little kids like me. But when I started with them, we had a really good friend that ended up kind of becoming a hidden treasure of our band. It was a guy named Thomas Howard. He lived down the street from me, and he was a songwriter. He was into really progressive bands like Rush and Yes and things like that. And I loved like Led Zeppelin and Janis Joplin and all that. So we kind of had a rub with each other all the time musically. We were kind of arguing back and forth about the different bands we liked. But man, he used to walk his dog every night about 10 o'clock. He would walk his family dog up the road and like smoke a cigarette, And I kicked my screen window out of my bedroom window, and I would sneak out with him, and we would sit in the driveway and talk. He was an incredible lyricist. He wrote incredible. He just had stacks and stacks of poetry and journals and all kinds of stuff. And we would just stare at the stars, like big blue sky dreaming, and go, wouldn't it be crazy if we wrote a song, we got it on the radio, and that people would, hear it. And, and to this day, we're still really close and still great friends. He wrote a bunch of songs on our first record. He helped write Phantom Rider, Hard Times, Being There on the first Surprise Attack record. So he was kind of a hidden part of a family member to our band because he was in our inner circle. He was a great talent and bass player, but to this day, I will call him, man. I'll be sitting in like baggage claim somewhere, my foot propped up, waiting on a ride to come get me, and I'll call him and go, hey, you remember when we used to dream about this? I'm like just gonna go somewhere and sing your song tonight. and we just get so tickled about it, man. It still means as much to me or more to me now than it did back then of getting to play and sing. And I just think you don't take it for granted, that passion that you have for music and for creating and all that stuff. It gets stronger, you know, the more that you do it and the longer that you're doing it. So it means a lot that there's songs that we sing that still resonate with people. You know, I just got back from a run up in the Northeast through Connecticut, New York, and New Jersey, and people were singing those lyrics back to me, man. And those records came out 30 years ago. You know, I can't believe I'm saying that, but it's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, no doubt that we're talking with the iconic voice of Tora Tora, Anthony Quarter. So, Anthony, now your music career begins professionally. You move to Memphis, mid-'80s. You bump into musicians who will become your future Tora Tora bandmates. Is that how it worked out?
Yeah, I actually, we all went to high school together. Patrick, the bass player, and I went to one high school, and Keith and John, the drummer and guitar player, went to another high school. And those three guys actually had participated in another group together before I came along, and they just started auditioning singers. I was kind of doing a little neighborhood, you know, jam band, and so I went over. I was super intimidated, man. I was scared to death. I took my acoustic. I thought I'd go over and do like some kind of cool singer-songwriter you know, audition, and I walked in and started strumming probably like an Eagles song or something, Desperado or something that I thought I could sing good, and they stopped me like halfway through the song and they go, "Hey, that's awesome, but do you know Toys in the Attic, or do you know Cheap Trick, or this Rush song that we know?" And so it was pretty incredible. It was fun, but there was something about it that the minute that all four of us got together, there was just some kind of chemistry. And you know, all these years later, you know, I have one sister. They're the closest thing to brothers that I would have. The fact that it's the original four guys and we're still touring and we're still making music and recording and stuff, they're just, you know, my family, man. We grew up. We've been on, you know, the craziest adventure together, and we've been really high on a mountaintop screaming to the world how great things are, and then we've been, you know, down in the deep, dark valley together. So to ride it out and have this experience with them has been just incredible, man. And we're still excited about being creative together, you know?
Yeah, and you know, you could not choose a better place to be at the time. Memphis, you know, the home of blues, soul, rock and roll. And Memphis was known to give local radio support at the time for bands, right, who stood out.
Yeah, it was amazing. At the time that we came along, there was tons of radio support. There were places where you could go and play original music. We were kind of still in the wave, you know, from the Strip, from L.A. and stuff in Memphis. There was definitely a scene in Memphis, a young act. There was some local DJs, specifically a guy named Malcolm Riker that was on a station at the time. He did a locals-only show. It was about an hour long, so it was kind of a coveted spot. You try to get in the studio, get your song recorded, you know, a quality recording, and get it on the radio. And for some reason, man, he just took a shine to us, and he got us on there. And we ended up becoming a top 5 requested song regionally. And the guy that signed us to A&M told us, he said, "I knew I was going to sign you. I flew into Memphis," and he goes, "When I got in my rent-a-car, I turned the radio on, and your song was playing." You know, so it was. We had a reach, and what you said about Memphis was incredible. Everywhere we went in the world, we had never toured or anything. We got signed out of Memphis before we started traveling, but everywhere we went, all over the world, Europe and the United States and everywhere, Memphis meant something to people. We felt like, you know, we wanted to be ambassadors for that music. Of course, we were influenced by the blues just because of where we were geographically and the scene there. Beale Street, it's a, you know, a strip of kind of restaurants and bars and stuff where they kind of service, you know, the tourists and stuff, but the players are incredible. We used to sneak down there and watch people all the time and try to sit in with them and all that stuff when we were little kids and underage. But everywhere we went in the world, they recognized it for something different. Some people were into the blues and they were talking about W.C. Handy and all that kind of stuff, but other people were talking about, you know, Elvis and Jerry Lee Lewis and Roy Orbison and Howlin' Wolf. And then other people were talking about Stax, you know, soul music, Otis Redding, Wilson Pickett, Carla Thomas, all those kind of people. Everywhere we went, it meant something different to people. So we felt like kind of ambassadors. We were like, man, this is kind of an honor to be from where we're at. And it also gave us a little bit different, stylistically, we stood out a little bit different from other bands in that era, I think, because of that influence. It made us sound a little bit different. We never went to LA. We never moved and, recorded out there. We did everything based out of Memphis. We always stayed in-house and at home. We recorded all of our recordings up until Bastards of Bill, which came out in 2019. We had done at Ardent Studios, which is a really famous studio. I don't know if your listeners have ever heard of it, but you should look it up. It's a very famous studio. Led Zeppelin, mixed some of Zeppelin 3 there. Stevie Ray Vaughan, Allman Brothers, Skinner, all these people came there. And it was an amazing experience. If we weren't on the road during that time period of when we were on A&M, if we weren't on the road, we were in the studio down there messing around and experimenting and trying to, write songs and all that kind of stuff. And the guy that ran it, his name is John Fry. If your listeners want to Google him or check him out, he owned the studio. He started as a kid in a sewing room, and he was savvy, man. At the time, Stax was blowing up when he decided to move it out to a location, and he bought the same recording equipment that Stax had. And at the time, Stax was the number one black-owned business in the United States, man. It was generating all kind of money. They were hiring all kind of people, but he bought the recording equipment, so the overflow came to him. He was a little 20-year-old, suburban kid, and he had all these producers coming over showing him the tricks. This is how we got the drum sound on that song. This is how we mic'd the guitar amp. So he was a huge mentor to us. He became like a father figure to my band, and our relationship, until he passed away back in 2014, every decision I ever made in my life since I was about 16, I talked to him about it, whether I was going to be, a singer in a rock band, if I was going to be an executive at a music, record label, or if I was going to be in music publishing or a professor teaching entertainment business. Every decision I ever made, I talked to him. So he was a huge influence on us. So y'all should look him up. He produced a band called Big Star. You guys, if your listeners aren't familiar with them, if you know That 70s Show, it's the theme song. That's Cheap Trick covering Big Star, hanging out down the street. So you should check that out. He's an amazing guy, and his recordings are still incredible, man.
Man, it's amazing. Anthony, the 1980s, I mean, there's so much great bands, so much, competition. Did you feel that, you had to be different from your competitors back then?
Man, we did. And I think what we were saying earlier about us being from Memphis, we didn't really get engulfed in the scene in L.A. and stuff. The people that were kind of we had friends that were competitors. Like, we toured with Dangerous Toys. They were kind of had a Southern thing going on from Texas, and we're still friends with them to this day. I still talk to Jason. He's still an incredible singer. I just saw they made an announcement on social media. He was sitting in with Accept. The singer had fallen sick during their U.S. tour, and he was filling in doing that singing. So, but man, the competition was kind of weird. We were kind of in our own lane because we were kind of removed and in Memphis. We were just trying to focus on, surviving, man. At that time, we didn't have any experience to kind of compare it to. We were just like, hey, let's try to do the best things that we can do. And just to be totally honest, man, and transparent, we owe a huge debt of gratitude to the producers that we were working with back then. We were just a little garage band, and we worked with a guy named Paul Ebersole, who went on to work with a bunch of successful bands. He was just starting out with us. And then Joe Hardy, who had done a bunch of the ZZ Top records, the Afterburner and all that stuff. So immediately they were connected to Ardent Studios, and immediately getting aligned with them gave us credibility in the industry. So they had a success, and they had signed on. So that got the industry looking. It got the people that were kind of following their previous work that they had worked on. They got interested in, hey, what's Joe and them working on now? So it was a crazy ride. Those two guys, and then we also worked with a guy named John Hampton on our second album, Wild America. He was based out of Ardent, and they were kind of like mad geniuses, man. They were those guys that you walked in, and they would have their, head in their hands and their hair sticking straight up, and they were in there twisting knobs and stuff. And I remember going in and hearing our first recordings with them and just going, oh my God, this sounds amazing. It was just so different. We had a little bit of recording experience before that, at some home studio kind of stuff that, maybe our friend Steve Houth started out with us doing an EP with us back in the day, and he was kind of teaching us about being in the studio. We didn't know really anything about that. We just knew about being loud and kind of cranking up. And when we went into Ardent, we said, hey, man, this is kind of going in a whole, different direction. It was very, very professionally done, and man, their skill sets were off the charts. And we're still super proud of those recordings from back then.
Yeah, I mean, for me, Anthony, what really set you guys apart from the other bands back then was your voice. And I believe Patrick Francis alluded this. He mentioned one time, once they acquired you in the band, your voice and sound, along with Tora Tora's metal edge, really set you guys apart.
Oh man, well, I've got a lot of influences, man. My family definitely was one, but I listened to a lot of Zeppelin and Janis Joplin and Rush, Aerosmith. We were listening to all the classic rock like everybody else. Paul Rodgers is one of my favorite singers ever. And I think, man, I was trying to find a voice, I think, at the beginning. We were so new. That first record, we were just trying to actually make sure we figured out how we wanted to sound. And there was a really big growth spurt between Surprise Attack and Wild America just because we were on the road for like 2 years. We became really more comfortable with our individual instruments. And, I sang really high through that whole first record, man. I learned a lesson on that. I started getting a little more selective on the second record because we stayed busy. We would do, 11 or 12 shows in a row. That starts wearing on you as a singer. But we were young back then. You were pretty resilient. But I started thinking about it dynamically, too. I was just like, hey, as a creative person and stuff, I just don't want to be at the top all the time. But I don't know, man. We listened to a lot of Rush. I loved Geddy Lee singing. So I think that had a big influence on me at the time. And I just toured with a guy this past weekend, Tony Harnell from TNT. I'm not sure if your listeners listen to him, but I remember Keith and them playing me his albums. I was talking to him about his vocal range and stuff. And, man, by the way, if you ever get a chance to see him, your listeners and stuff, his voice is freaking phenomenal. I mean, he's still singing 10,000 Lovers and all your favorite songs from TNT. He's nailing those high notes. But I think those kind of singers and stuff had some kind of influence on me. Of course, we were listening to all the popular stuff, too. Bon Jovi was out. The Motley Crue records were blowing up at that time. And those, I had those posters on my wall. I was listening to those records and stuff. We were dreaming, man. I'm serious. We were looking at a big blue sky and dreaming, just going, wouldn't it be crazy if we got to record a record and got music out? And at the time, Keith and I, the guitar player, were cutting grass. My mom was a real estate agent in Memphis. We were driving around in like a Dodge truck with like lawnmowers in the back. And we said, wouldn't it be crazy if we recorded a record and it like got out on the radio and stuff? And I'm not kidding. It blew our mind, man. We watched Headbangers Ball every weekend, like religiously, like everybody did back in the day. Saturday night, you were kind of sitting around wondering what was going to happen. And then, we worked with A&M. We recorded the record for about a year. And Walking Shoes ended up being one of the late songs on that project. We had probably written 60 songs or something for that first record. And I went over to Keith's apartment one day, and I remember I was laying in his floor, man, and he started playing that lick to Walking Shoes. And I was like, oh, my God, what is that? That sounds cool. And we ended up recording it for the record, and the A&M decided, they said, hey, man, this should be the single. It's got that kind of blues thing. We want to do it. And then we were sitting at our house one day, and we looked in MTV, man, our video came on, and we couldn't believe it. We just went, oh, my God, our freaking video is on Headbangers Ball. It's crazy. And the next thing we knew, man, we were on Headbangers Ball talking to Adam Curry and doing the interview, and then we hosted Hard 60. And, at the time we were with A&M, and they were powerful. They were an independent label, but they were very powerful. They had Janet Jackson and Sting. They had Extreme that was in the heavy metal world, and Soundgarden. And we were the third band for our specific A&R guy. Had worked with Extreme and Soundgarden. And so they had some leverage, and they said, we're going to help you guys and promote you and market you and get you out. And we love the label. I'm still in touch with some of those executives that we work with, and we have the craziest stories and craziest times together. And it was just amazing. We were with them probably, I don't know, for about a year and a half or something, and they sold the company. They had started A&M selling 45s out of the trunk of a car. And they ended up selling it. I think the number was around, $500 million or something, because they had all the, pop acts and rock acts, and they had a huge depth of rock on there, the Humble Pie people and, Styx. And we just couldn't believe it. When we first got on there, we couldn't even believe we were on the label. We were like, oh, my God, this is incredible.
Yeah, it's incredible. I mean, and you mentioned Walking Shoes. I mean, you can't forget Phantom Rider, one of the most underrated power ballads of the decade, I feel. Really a masterpiece, Phantom Rider.
Oh, thank you, man. And that's another song, Thomas Howard, that I mentioned earlier. He and I worked on that song together. I remember that opening chord sitting on the edge of my bed in my room, man, at my house, sitting there strumming it. I've still got the acoustic. It was a little $50 Viking acoustic guitar. I've still got it sitting in my house, that I was sitting there strumming on it going, I wonder what this song's going to be, And Thomas and I just sat down and we started thinking about celebrating life. We were thinking about being young and just, we had a great group of friends that we all kind of ran around with in town. And we were indebted to Memphis. They launched us, man. They were the people that got on the phone and shared our music and called in to the radio stations and called MTV and all that kind of stuff. So we're indebted to them. But we were thinking about just how we all got together and how quickly life changes. We had some friends that went through things. We had a friend that passed away. So, it kind of inspired us to think about that and just how powerful one person is, how powerful we don't realize it, but we have superpowers, man. The way that you influence each other, the way that you touch people. And, I think that song still resonates today because we all are like that. I think people are searching for that sometimes, and we don't ever know what kind of battle somebody's going through, man, with their finances or their health or their job or whatever. And for you to encourage each other, it means a lot. So we just said, hey, man, we only come through here one time. Let's celebrate. And we were talking about it as we were writing that song. So it's still a lot of fun. People still sing it. Every show that I do on acoustic and stuff, we sing it. Of course, we do that one and Walking Shoes and just so many great memories, man. As I talk to you guys and do these interviews and stuff, I have all these flashes of memories, man. It's been just a blur, but it's been so great. And we're always so inspired by all the people that we meet and talk to. They help us write our music. They don't realize that, but they keep us inspired and motivated to be creative,
Yeah, I mean, you're definitely part of the fabric of American pop music culture, So, this is an honor for me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for saying that.
Oh, absolutely. What about Dancing with a Gypsy? Didn't that appear in Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure?
Yeah, this was awesome, man. It actually just ended up being a perfect time, and we had created 4 songs to shop to the record labels. Ardent Studios ended up helping us. They had another successful signing through their studio. It was a guy named John Kilzer. He was a very prolific songwriter, incredible dude, great Memphian. But anyway, they said, hey, we want to cut these demos. They did kind of a production deal with us where they said, hey, we'll cut the 4 songs and we'll give you some access to some of the people that we've met. And one of those songs was Dancing with a Gypsy. So when we got with A&M, as we were writing the record, they said, hey, since you've already got this one, it's already, done and mastered and everything. They said, we are doing the soundtrack for Bill and Ted's, this might be an opportunity for us to give a preview. And so we were thrilled, of course, man. It was awesome. The timing just worked out perfect. The song was already ready to rock. And I remember I took some friends of mine to the movie theater to go. We went and sat in the theater, to watch and see. And, man, it was just so exciting. And it was so killer just to be a part of it. There was a bunch of great bands on there. Extreme was another one. Do You Want to Play With Me? I remember that one was on there. So there was a lot of people that kind of did some previews of some of their music that was coming out. And but I will tell you this is the only way to get that was on that Bill and Ted soundtrack. And recently my oldest son gave me a birthday present, and it was the Wild Stallions did a repressing. I don't know if y'all remember in the movie, that was the band, Keanu Reeves band.
Yep.
He gave me a version of the album. It says Wild Stallions on the front of it, and it's a repressing of that record. And he somehow found a record label that had done it and gave it to me for my birthday. So it's a really special memory. And we had a lot of fun, man. We wrote that song in a time period. I don't know if you read in the bio and stuff, but we had this crazy warehouse that we used to rehearse in.
I did.
Our guitar player's dad was in the glue business, and he had this storage space. It was right in the middle of town, right next to the Coliseum where we saw Van Halen and AC/DC and, all of our favorite bands in concert growing up. It was right across the parking lot from it, and it was empty, man. It just had these 55-gallon drums in there, and they were all empty. And so we we said, could we rehearse in there? And he goes, yeah, I'll get y'all a key or whatever. And we went, and as soon as we walked in, man, it was this huge facility. I'm not kidding. And we looked at it and we went, oh my God, we got to throw a party. We we pushed all those drums to one end of it had, big, lifting doors on each side of it. We pushed them all to one end. We laid some plywood on top of those 55-gallon drums, and we put some black garbage bags off the front of the stage. And we had this huge stage. I mean, it was like 100 feet wide. I'm not kidding. We put a giant PA system in there. Keith's dad had fronted us up, put up some money to get a giant PA, and we told him we were using it for rehearsal, but we stuck it on the stage. And man, we used to throw these crazy parties. I'm not kidding. I was telling you earlier that we knew that DJ Malcolm Riker. He started advertising our party back then. I don't know. I mean, it's so different now with social media stuff, but for us to have access to a radio station back then was crazy. He would come on and go to the warehouse, Tora Tora. I mean, he came on and we were going, oh my God, he's announcing our party. And because of where the city sat, Memphis is kind of in the southwest corner of Tennessee. It goes over Arkansas and Mississippi and Alabama. They broadcast all over the place. So, man, all these people showed up at this party. I'm not kidding. It was a Halloween party. Everybody dressed up, and we hired 2 football players from Ole Miss, which is about, right down the street from Memphis. They worked the door. We said, y'all get the money. We'll give you all the beer you can drink, and just don't let anybody get in a fight, because when you're young, y'all remember how everybody, your chest was puffed out, and you kind of cocky, and people didn't like how you looked at their girlfriend or whatever. We just said, we don't want any of that. We want this to be inclusive. We want everybody here, the hippies, the jocks, the stoners, everybody. We want everybody to come in and have a good time and nobody judge each other. And that's kind of how.
I'm sorry. They're telling me I have 30 seconds left. Anthony.
Oh, God. Okay. Awesome. Well, listen, this is what I'd like to tell y'all. Thank you, first of all, for having me on here. I really appreciate it. This is awesome to have a platform to talk. Tell all your listeners, ToraToraMusic.com. This is the best way to get in touch with us through our website. You can also find us on all social media platforms. Tora Tora Band, just at Tora Tora Band. And then also we're on all your digital streaming platforms. You can go to YouTube, you can go to Spotify, anything that you use, Apple Music, we're on there. So, and we'll look forward to seeing you guys out on the road. Man, Card King, Brian, thank you so much for having me, man. This has been incredible. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. You're always welcome. The legendary Anthony Corder, Tora Tora. Until next week, happy collecting to all.